if you want to take down as powerful a Prime Minister and as popular a government as this, Rahul Verma, is the mere coming together of opposition forces enough, or do you think they need to come up with a cogent idea, a promise that voters buy into? Because in the absence of the idea, if your only glue is anti-Modiism or that investigative agencies are being misused against you, does that cut enough ice with the voters to be able to get them to vote against the BJP and this Prime Minister?
Thank you, Rahul. I agree with Rajdeep a lot on the 2 points he made. First, dynasty plus corruption narrative is not going to be surprising in the run-up to 2024. Prime Minister Modi is going to use it. He knows this is opposition's weak spot. And so he's going to continue using this idea, saying that all of them have come together because all of these parties are dynastic and there are charges of corruption. Whether they are proven or not, that's a different matter. Second, your question in some ways answers it also. See, all elections are made up of, basically all election campaigns are made up of 5 things. First, you have to identify what your targeted constituency or group of citizens you are basically trying to mobilize. Second, what is your message? And message is basically based on your ideology, your performance, all those things, which is what you're calling as narrative. The third one is, what is the machinery that you are going to use? The organizations, in many cases, some of these organization parties may not be able to match BJP's machinery. Fourth is, who's your messenger? Who's the leader around which the message, around which the mechanics, everything is going to work? And 5 is, without performance, you can't basically weave all of these together. So in some ways, see, you have to see Patna as the first step. It was the easiest step for opposition to take because many of these parties who came together, they have always, for last few months, they have been making this kind of noise. In many places, Congress is already in alliance with many of these players. So what happened in Patna is nothing sort of extraordinary. But this is the first step. They have taken it. Now they are planning to meet in Shimla. And I hope between Patna and Shimla, and by the time assembly election happens, the opposition does not only focuses on who's coming together, but also what their idea of India is going to be, on what ideological narrative they are going to challenge BJP and Modi.
Rajiv, how cohesive did they seem when you were speaking to these leaders in Patna? Did they seem like a ragtag coalition? You've covered a few coalition governments, and I just came back from the US, and speaking to many congressmen, senators, and US political scientists, the one very clear sense is the reason why India is now being seen as an emerging great power as opposed to being seen as a middle power in years gone by, is because of political stability, which is one of India's biggest plus points in the eyes of Western observers, that here is a government that's doing whatever it is, what's and all, even if you leave them aside for a moment, it's got political stability and get things done. Does a coalition prospect unsettle that?
Yes and no. I mean, if you look at coalition, some of the most radical reforms in this country, both in when Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister and when Dr. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister and Atal Bihari Vajpayee was Prime Minister, took place during coalition governments. But what we saw, Rahul, and what I think is clear, is from 1989 right up to 2014, we had 25 years of coalition governments. And therefore, every year there was a question mark, will the government last? Because there was always someone or the other who could pull it down. In the last 8-9 years, whatever other questions have been raised about the Modi government, the one question that has not been asked, will this government last the entire 5 years? So I can see why an investor or why the world is looking at India as a relative oasis of stability. But stability alone is not enough. You see, you've also had 10 years of anti-incumbency. You asked me about whether you saw this as a ragtag coalition in Patna. Actually, I was surprised that barring Arvind Kejriwal, who seemed to be a bit of an X-factor taking on the Congress, demanding that the ordinance issue be raised, the rest of them, including strangely enough Mamata Banerjee, seemed more than willing to break bread even with the left. I think this is an existential...
But how can she do it? It's not possible.
You see...
Well, think of it this way. On those seats of West Bengal, in this 42 seats, what can Mamata Banerjee give the left? You can possibly have an alliance with the rump of the Congress that's left in Murshidabad and a few other places. How do left, Congress and TMC fight together? It's inconceivable.
Sure. Look, that's the final step. Whether they do these 300, 400 one-on-one fights, Whether that happens, you're absolutely right. There's a huge question mark in states like Bengal, in states like Kerala, in states like Delhi, in states like Punjab. There are huge question marks. I take that. But I think that's what, before you go into the arithmetic, this group is going to have to find the chemistry, the narrative which glues them together. What is it that is bringing Mamata Banerjee closer to the left, apart from the fact that she fears that if she doesn't tie up and the BJP wins another election, parties like the Trinamool Congress could face an existential crisis. I think that's the challenge. You see, these parties are going to have to tell the voters, we are not just opportunists. We have come to fight because we have a certain ideological core minimum program. That I haven't seen. I've seen them reach out to each other in Patna, but I've yet to see what is that ideological core that will go beyond just anti-Modism. I think that's the challenge.